Good afternoon, beautiful people. Just wanted to tap in with you first and foremost and wish you a happy Juneteenth. Just want to stop by as the resident historian and kind of get off a little lament that I have about today after taking a look at some data that pretty much disturbed me. So I just wanted to share with you all just to kind of give you a little bit of perspective on how important this day is and how under celebrated it still seems to be. So, for those of you that have not been hiding under a rock, you know this is the fifth annual Juneteenth national celebration, right? It's been recognized at different states for a number of years and even decades in some instances. But this is the fifth year that it's actually being recognized at a federal level. It was signed into legislation by then President Biden back in 2021. And so, what I thought about is how many people actually really understand what Juneteenth is and recognize it and incorporate it into their list of holidays that they do some sort of celebration, or if nothing else, just observance of, right? So, my research took me to find out that there's 11 federally recognized holidays. And so I'll run the list off to you. New Year's Day, MLK Day, Washington's birthday, Memorial Day, Juneteenth, 4th of July, Labor Day, Columbus Day, formerly now known as Indigenous Peoples Day, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. These are all days where federal employees get paid days off, right? So when I got up this morning, I was just looking at all these wonderful illustrations and iterations of Juneteenth all throughout the cyberspace. I felt good about that because it's about time it's got into major mainstream circulation. But then it occurred to me that there's still quite a few states that don't recognize or observe Juneteenth. And so I just wanted to share some of my concerns about that, some of my laments about that. So currently, there are 18 states that do not recognize Juneteenth as a state holiday, meaning that state employees do not get paid, have a paid day off. And that's important because all of the other federal holidays have that built into them. So, of the 50 United States, there's 18 states that do not recognize and celebrate Juneteenth in alphabetical order: Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, Florida, Hawaii, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Mississippi, Montana, New Hampshire, North Carolina, South Dakota, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. And so that got me to thinking. I said, okay, you know, sometimes states are a little slow in observing things that the federal government puts into place. That's not a uncommon thing. But again, we're in year number 5, folks. And so I started thinking, well, if there are 18 states that do not observe Juneteenth at the state level, I wonder how many other federal holidays states do not observe. All right. And so when I did my light research, what I discovered is, you know, obviously there's some that are at the top of our priority list and built into the American cultural fabric, right? So let's remove um, New Year's, let's remove MLK and Washington's birthday, let's remove Columbus Day, aka Indigenous Peoples Day, and Thanksgiving and Christmas, right? Those are, I think, universally accepted throughout all 50 states, and they're observed. And so let's just focus on 5. So Memorial Day. So if there's 18 states that don't recognize Juneteenth, of those states, how many do you think also don't recognize Memorial Day? 0. Point being, yes, brown, black, and indigenous and others participated in service for their country and they lost their lives. And so that's adhered to, that's honored in all 50 states. Let's go to 4th of July. How many states do you think don't honor 4th of July in the state level? 0. Obviously, 4th of July is one of the staples of the United States, and it's supposed to be mark the independence or the movement to becoming independent from Great Britain, better known as England at that time, right? Labor Day. 0 of those 18 states that don't state recognize Juneteenth don't recognize Labor Day. And clearly, everyone should understand the contributions of indigenous peoples, African Americans, Africans who were stolen from Africa and brought to the Americas, and others, right? And then Veterans Day. Of those 18 states that do not observe Juneteenth on a state level, only one state is in question of those, and that's Wisconsin. And Wisconsin does recognize Veterans Day. It's just that they flip flop between the days they honor. Sometimes it's November 11th, sometimes it's November 12th. So what I'm thinking is if outside of the big iconic Americana federalized holidays, there still lies one, two, three, four, five of them that, states could argue, hey, we have way too many federal holidays, we can't observe them all. But ironically, the only one that's a federal holiday that is not recognized on the state level is Juneteenth. And so I have to ask myself why and how is this possible? And then we dig deeper and we say of those 18 states, right, there's 6 of those states that actually packed up and left the Union at the start of the Civil War, excuse me. So I would give them a pass if I were to give a pass, right? I would say Arkansas, Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Mississippi, right? They didn't want to play ball with big America as it relates to slaves and the emancipation of slaves and the abolishment of slavery, right? But they have recognized it through the 13th Amendment and the 14th Amendment up to this point. And of those states that I just mentioned, those have some of the highest populations of Black people living within those states. Not the highest population, but the highest of the populations of Black people living in the states. So it's kind of surprising to me that those states do not recognize it, right? I can kind of surmise why a New Hampshire or in Iowa or in Indiana. And one more pass I'll give is to the state of Hawaii, because if you know, the Hawaiians don't even want to be part of America. And for those of you that are unclear on that and that aren't privy, just go ahead and do some Google research and type in the restoration movement in Hawaii. Find out how Hawaii was stolen and was forced into becoming part of the United States and actually formally asked to be removed from the United States and become its own sovereign nation back in 1994 with then President Clinton. So there's a history of Hawaii not even wanting to be part of America, and for some good reasons. So again, if I had to extend the past, I would do that. But what I'm bringing to you all's attention is that we're supposed to be moving towards a post-racism, post-racist country. And if we celebrate the 4th of July as the independence from the tyranny of a king and a parliament of England and wanted to have these peoples that came to this land, and whether they took it legally or illegally, they take possession of the land and they wanted to have some say-so in their own governance, then you have to look at Juneteenth as the closing of the chapter, that deep, dark, ugly chapter in American history of chattel slavery. And so if we're going to honor the 4th of July and the tenets and the principles of the Declaration of Independence, then it only makes sense to me, not because I'm a Black historian, but because I'm a historian, that we go ahead and we attach Juneteenth to that celebration, because that is the closing of and the beginning period, theoretically, of the healing process that was supposed to take place in this country, recognizing that the yokes of slavery had broken people from other countries, scattered them, brought them here, cut them off from every single aspect of their culture, right? Diaspora is what we officially call it. And forevermore, any American born Black person has a severed identity and has a crisis because we don't quite know exactly where we came from, but we want to be considered and recognized as being American. But if we don't have our own seat at the table, and if we can't influence and impact what kind of things become part of Americana, are we really Americans, or is it just something that's said by politicians and people that speak out of both sides of their mouth? So I'm bringing this to you all because I'm imploring you to think about ways in which we can come together, ways in which we can actually shake off and get rid of all these old customs, the ways that we can peel back these layers and get rid of these things that seem to be so divisive. So the celebration, the recognition, the exalting, and the observance of Juneteenth is not counter-American. It's not anti-American. It's not anti-4th of July, but it actually puts to rest the great question that one of our ancestors, Frederick Douglass, asked, which is, what is 4th of July to a slave? Right. So if America used to be a terrible space in many regards, and we've made great strides in order to be able to separate ourselves from our forefathers, then it seems like we still have work to do. And we still have to recognize that the way that we make minority ethnic groups, aka marginalized or racialized groups, feel like they're part of the American fabric and the American story, America's history, you have to be willing to absorb some of those subcultural norms into the mainstream so that everyone feels represented. So for anyone that lives in the state where there's the large majority of whites and there aren't that many African Americans, that many black people in that state, that doesn't mean that you still shouldn't look at Juneteenth the same way you look at the 4th of July. It doesn't tie you to and force you to have to take ownership of what your forefathers did to our forefathers. It's actually saying we are not them. This is not that time. And we do want you to sit at the table. So you coming to terms with the fact that slavery was abolished and Juneteenth recognizes the very, very last corners of the Deep South that was finally told that the war is over. You all are free. Right? It's a no-brainer. So all I'm saying is as we move through this calendar year and we start looking at the observances of certain federal holidays, and I'm not here to tell you that you should observe personally every holiday, but what we have to do is we have to normalize Juneteenth. We have to normalize the fact that our country had a checkered, terrible, and bloody past. However, it corrected itself with the 13th Amendment. It corrected itself with the states that seceded coming back into the Union. And yes, we still had lots and lots of dark days after that point, but we have to have something to celebrate. So if we're celebrating 1776, then we also should be supporting and celebrating Juneteenth. Till next time, one love.